All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Can y'all hear me okay? Commissioner Lucas, Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
All right. And I see we got Commissioner Street joining. Um, hey, and then Mayor Branch is not available. He's taking some personal time this week. What is owner? Oh, Robbie, you're muted, sir.
That's
Why does it say
presumptuous.
owner?
Yeah, it said owner rather than Robbie Hughes.
Owner Watson, where do I change that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Hey,
just
computer
making sure
man,
that
where do I change that?
next time you're in here, IT can sit down with you. It's probably just how you're set up your Zoom account on your city iPad. We can definitely fix that. So,
Oh, I'm on my computer.
okay.
All right.
Yep.
That's
All
fine.
good. Yep. No, totally good. But
That's that.
it's good. We see your face, so I think that will set Nevin's heart and mind at ease that we know you
Okay.
are who you say you are. So, all right. So, this is virtual workshop today, is specifically around the finances. And so City Clerk Treasurer Jan Smith has joined us. And just as a quick recap, there were some questions maybe earlier this year, maybe at the very end of 2025 about the finances. And, this is a report that started being included in the agendas back towards the kind of the latter half of 2024. And it's on the first meeting of every month as part of the consent agenda. But we just basically have the four reports that are out there. And obviously, we desire the elected officials to be informed and up to date on where we are. They're kind of off to the wings, but we have Samantha Perman, the budget manager, and then Natalie McSwain, Chief Assistant City Attorney here as well on the screen. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have to get permission to do that. Wow. If Donald, if you would be so kind as to grant that request, please, sir.
You think he's listening?
He is definitely, Donald is always listening. So,
Oh, that's scary.
yeah. So,
I think you're good.
am I good? All right. I think am I sharing? I don't think I'm sharing. There we go. Now I'm able to share, and I will just jump right into these four reports. Let me kind of maybe minimize that down here, minimize all of that. All right, Madam Clerk, Treasurer, all yours.
No,
No,
to start at the end.
I went,
You want to start there?
I went,
Yeah, this is how. So I'm starting at the end because that's how I prepare the reports. So this, if you'll remember the last time we spoke about the color of money. So this is one of the colors of money. This is an internal service fund. This is the equipment maintenance fund. So the important thing to know about this fund really is to watch the expenses. But at the end of the day, at the end of the fiscal year, all that negative money down there at the bottom is going to be allocated out to all the user departments. So the goal towards September is to get that negative 322,000 closer to zero, because we don't want to have to allocate anything extra out to the internal service funds at the end of the fiscal year. Okay.
Well,
up one page.
there is a group of people that know how to spend money, and we can get that done.
All right.
We can get it done.
Oops, sorry, ma'am. There's your page 12.
Okay. So this is the Marina Fund. This is an enterprise fund. This covers both the Panama City Marina and the St. Andrews Marina. So what we're looking for here is the charges for services number. We want that to be on target with our budget. So this was December. So we would like our charges for services to be about 25%. And we're only about 12%. So we're lagging a little bit on the charges for services. The personnel costs, well, I'll touch on that when we get to the actual report, because anything that's looks wonky on these reports gets discussed on the financial statement report. So that's what we're looking for in the Marina Fund. We're obviously looking at the expenses to make sure they're in line with our expected value of 25%. And the charges for services is the big one there that we want to see at 25%. And then another enterprise fund is the Environmental Services Fund. And basically the same thing. We're looking for the charges for services. We're looking for that to be about 25%. And we're pretty close there. And the expenses, we want to see about 25% as well. And then the negative year-to-date transactions at the bottom there are covered by, if you can look up just above the totals, there's a line item that says budgetary changes in reserves. So that's the amount of reserves that have been set aside to spend on this fund to balance the budget. So as long as we go through the year and we're not exceeding that, if you'll move the cursor, and we're not exceeding that number at the bottom there, year-to-date transaction as a negative number, then we're okay, because that's what we're expecting to spend. We expected to spend 2.7 million over the budget. We're right now at 714,000 over the budget. The next fund is the utility fund. Same thing, an enterprise fund. The charges for services, we want to see that around 25%. Impact fees are lagging. Impact fees have been lagging for a couple of years now, and I'm not really clear on, I haven't had a chance really to talk to the budget department about what's going on there. But it seems like they've been lagging for a couple of years. Then obviously the expenses, same thing. You want to see about 25% down the line. And the utility fund in December actually had a surplus. So they are not using their reserves at this time, which is good news. Next one is the debt service fund. So the debt service funds, those are governmental debt service. All the enterprise fund debt service gets recorded in the funds. So you'll see the debt service payments in the enterprise funds. You won't see them in the governmental funds. And all the debt service funds, I just combine them all because they're all really small and boring. So you're looking, the interest earnings and the net increase and decrease in fair value. That's our investment portfolio on the $150 million loan that gets reported in here. And then the transfers are all the transfers from the funds that own the debt, because everybody has a piece of this debt. Most of the governmental funds have a piece of this debt. And then obviously your principal and interest payments. Principal payments, almost all of them are due on October 1st. So you're always going to see almost 100% from the very beginning of the year, but it's never going to go over 100% because that's the principal payments that we're going to make throughout the whole entire year. And the reason that the year-to-date transactions were negative is because it's okay. Because we haven't made the transfers yet, which we'll get into on the report as well. Then we have the Housing and Community Services Fund. This is the CDBG fund. We haven't got our allocation yet, so we have no revenue come in for this fiscal year yet. Again, you want to look at the expenses, make sure they're around 25%. And we were scheduled to spend 237,000 in reserves. We're at 69, so we're in good shape there too. It's a special, this is a different color of fund money. This is a special revenue fund. There are specific special revenue funds have specific things that you can use the money for. None of the other funds that I've talked about really have any restrictions on where they can spend their funds, not like special revenue funds. So CDBG program has to be the money has to be spent on low to moderate income programs. Okay, and then the next one is SHIP, which is very similar to the CDBG, only it's just housing. We have the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. We have not received our SHIP allocation yet. And again, the expenses are within the 25% range. typically when you have a special revenue fund, you're going to budget all the remaining reserves should be budgeted every year because they're supposed to be spent on an annual basis. The allocations are supposed to be spent annually. So generally, when you see budgetary changes in reserves, that's generally all their reserves or pretty close to all their reserves. So we're still in good shape there. We have spent 351,000, but again, we haven't gotten our allocation yet. The next fund is next ones are the CRAs. So we have the Millville CRA here. The CRAs get all their TIF money at the end of December. Well, this year the county didn't pay until January, but it's supposed to be received by December 31st. So what you have there is half the money that's from the city's portion. And then when you look at tomorrow or on the 10th, when you look at the January report, you'll see that 100% of the allocation has been received on the TIF, all 4 TIF revenues. Again, the expenses you want to look at and see that they're around 25%. And your reserves, again, they've budgeted their reserves and they're well, thank you very much. They're well in line. They have a nice surplus so far. They haven't spent any capital. So they have $1.1 million budgeted in capital, but they haven't spent hardly any of it. So we're expecting that to go. Downtown North, same story. Half the TIF is here because the city made their contribution, and you'll see the counties in January, the January report. Again, 25% along the expenses. Budgetary changes in reserves have been budgeted, and again, their surplus is because of the capital outlay number is almost $1 million, and we've only spent 14,000. Downtown CRA should be very similar. The CRAs generally run, pretty much the same story all the way through. Half the TIF has been received by the city. The expenses are roughly 25%, mostly salaries right now. The capital hasn't been spent at all, and the budgetary changes in reserves have been budgeted. Their reserves have been budgeted, and they're ahead of the game as well. Then for St. Andrews, same thing. Those operating costs, I'm not sure what's going on there, but they probably have. Sometimes what happens with the CRAs is they'll spend money from one fund. It has to be allocated over to the other funds. A lot of times they share expenses. So that might be what's going on there. But everything there looks good. They're a little bit, their budgetary change in reserves of 1.7, and they've used 51,000 so far. Then we have the infrastructure surtax fund. The money from the infrastructure surtaxes comes in from the state of Florida. Anything that we receive from the state of Florida, we typically receive it 1 to 2 months, sometimes even 3-month lag before we receive our revenues from the state. Haven't spent any of their capital operating. That's probably the audit, and so all their reserves have been budgeted, and they're still in good shape as well. Then last but not least is the general fund. So the general fund, what you would want to look for here, most of the ad valorem taxes are received in December and January. So by March, you should pretty much have 100% of your ad valorem that you're going to receive. License and permits, that includes the merchant license fee. So that's why that's a big number. And we're at 25%, which is good because that's where we are in the year. Other taxes, that's the state taxes, the communication service tax, the utility taxes, and local option gas tax. State revenue sharing, that's our share of the state taxes. The fire service assessment is it runs with the ad valorem taxes. So by the end of March, you should have 100% nearly 100% of your collections for both ad valorem and the fire service. They're billed and collected together. Franchise fees we get from FP&L and some smaller ones from, I think, Gulf Coast Utility. And so they're lagging as well. Probably should not be that low. Something probably just didn't get recorded timely. Charges for services, those are the things that we charge for, such as the police details. Anytime we issue a public records request that requires payment. We charge the DI. There's a lot of things that lumped into that number. We charged administrative fees from the DIB, and lots of other various accounts. There's probably 30 or 40 accounts on that line item. Fines and forfeitures, that's code enforcement and any police forfeitures that we happen to receive. Then interest hasn't been recorded yet. Rents and royalties, those are for facility rentals. That sale of fixed assets, I think that's the one that we actually collected last year, the 2.8 million for the Jenks property. Then miscellaneous interfund transfers. That's most of the funds the admin fees that we charge to the other funds for administering them. Expenses, again, you want to look for 25% down the line. The budgetary changes in reserves for the general fund so far are 1.1 million, but we're ahead of the game by 9.2 million. So that looks good. So let's look at the report. And in the report, the background, that's just the the code language of why you're getting this report. And then my process, that's just kind of a little background on that's probably more interesting to accountants than anybody else. But that just gives you the procedures that I go through to create the report. Then I do a little analysis on most of the funds. And the outliers that I talked about while we were going through the report. The fiscal year is 25% complete. So we have most of the funds performing as expected. Citywide transfers and interest earnings have yet to be recorded. So that's across all funds. Then in the general fund, I talk about how the ad valorem and fire service have been collected and expenses are within expectations. Infrastructure surtax has little activity and the transfers are mostly for grant matches. I'll scroll down. What's this, ma'am? The CRAs talk about the city TIF contributions. County contributions were received in January. Millville CRA received a grant reimbursement. Housing and SHIP haven't received their allocations. Most of the debt service principal payments are due in October. Interest payments are made quarterly. And the excess personnel costs in the Marina Fund are the result of an unexpected employee payout. So as you're going through looking at the financial statements, you can kind of go back and forth with this report and see if something's out of line. There should be some kind of a comment in the report that will describe why something looks a little wonky. So the next thing is the fund balance analysis. So this is a little spreadsheet that I put together. I started doing this in October of 2024 after I got the results of the September 2024 audit. And things were a little scary for me, I'll have to admit. So the unassigned fund balance at 9/30/2024, that's an audited number. That's the only real number on this page. Then we have, and then we're going to try to estimate what our 2025 unassigned fund balance is going to look like. So we have to take out everything that is not unassigned. So that's the restricted stuff. That's non-spendable fund balances. That includes inventory and prepaid expenses and restricted fund balances are for the law enforcement trust fund. And then reserves that were spent in 2025, estimated reserves that were spent in 2025 gives us the estimated unassigned fund balance at 9/30/2025. So when I get my financial statements in 2025 for 2025, after the audit's done, I'm going to expect to see about a $4.2 million fund balance in the general fund. So if you look at the budgeted expenses for fiscal year 2025 in the general fund, that's the almost $75 million there. The unassigned fund balance as a percentage is straight up 4.2 divided by 75. That's the 5.65 number. Our city policy target is 6.1. Our city policy target is 30% plus 10% for unassigned. So where we're at with that estimate is 6.15, and the GFOA recommends 16.7, and we're at 6.85 under that. There's two different definitions. So that's why there's two different numbers. The city definition varies from the GFOA definition. So that's why there's two different calculations for those. So then that's what we're expecting to see in our next fiscal report. But now where are we going in 2026? So I try to project out to September 30th of 2026 on this page. I start with the unassigned fund balance at the estimated unassigned fund balance at 2025, and I take out the budgeted reserves for fiscal year 2026. That leaves us the unassigned fund balance for September 30th, 2026. If you are assuming, we're assuming that the non-spendable and the restricted fund balances are the same. So we're assuming that those stay the same for the whole entire year, which they won't, but we have to make some assumptions here to project out to the future because I don't have a crystal ball. But so the budgeted expenses for fiscal year 26 as of December 31st were 69.4 million. Then when you divide that out, we're at 4.44%. And then per city policy, 4.53, and per GFOA, 5.08. And then there's some language there about the city's ordinance that was adopted in 2017, establishing the fund balance policy. And then if you'll go to the fund balance report, then that's just a little, that's the definition, the city's policy, the definition of the city's policy, and the Government Finance Officers Association's policy, where you're estimated to be at December 31st, 2025 for fiscal year 25, and then projected for fiscal year 2026. And the projections have been beating forecasts for 2025, but they're still not where they need to be. So this is where I advise the manager to further reduce expenditures. And that's all I have, but I welcome your feedback because I want you to feel as though you're informed. When budget time comes around, I don't want anybody to be surprised. Everybody should be aware of where the financial statements stand every month. So I'm ready for feedback. They're all asleep.
Yep, I'm trying to. Too many things open.
Can you send us all of what you just went over?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you put, there was one of those that you said there was like 40 different things that made up that account.
Sure.
I'd like to know what those are. I think I had a question on every one of those pages that I couldn't write fast enough to go through them. So I don't know how to ask my questions on each page. But I'm gonna let Josh go first because he's gonna ask a bunch of questions, and then that might answer some of mine. How about that?
Commissioner Hughes, do you still have your January 13th agenda? Because it would have been in that. Or have you already turned that back in?
I think I turned it in.
Okay.
Send it, no worries.
Yep. Commissioner
All
Street?
right.
Okay, so a couple questions. One is for Jonathan and Brandy. So why are we tracking behind on impact fees? Because that was one thing that Jan brought up. If it's been multi-years, I'm curious as to why. And the reason why I asked this question, just for everybody's benefit, when we go and we make these budgetary allocations, this is what's setting the budget for overall. If we have one fund that comes in under revenue, well, oftentimes that can leave us spending more than what we project in a different fund. And so if we're not getting an accurate picture of what impact fees are, I'd like to understand that a little more. So if we could just start there, that would be a good topic of discussion.
If I may, Jonathan, your moose screen is being projected, shared.
Yeah, we can't see each other. All we can see is a moose.
Okay. Wow.
So-
That's interesting.
Stop sharing.
I guess I just need to stop share then.
There
Now
you
can
go.
you see us?
And
Okay. I would say for the utilities and the solid waste or the environmental services funds, both of those revenues are projected based on the rate studies and the rate study consultants and the sufficiency study projected out revenues for the 5-year period. So we use that as kind of our baseline and we look at that. We'll go back and look, but it might be that they're just being classed wrong and put into the impact fee line. We might be over on another revenue line. It's best to look at maybe the revenue as a whole and see, but it might just be the way they're being coded in our system.
But we
Is-
will definitely check
We'll,
this. Yeah.
we'll look at it, but just so you know, when you approve the 5-year rate sufficiency study, there's projections in there for revenues and expenditures for the 5 years. And that's where a lot of those revenues come from.
Are you using the revenue side of that as well for like water and sewer rates? Are you using that as in your budget number as well?
Yes,
So if we over collect in that aspect, that's not reflected in your budget process. You're taking the 5-year study as that is what is projected for those 5 years, and you build your budget on that. What I'm asking is, are we taking one revenue category and using the rate study to set the budget there and not another category of that same rate study? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
we're using the rate study, but we do look at our trends and our historical actuals to see if it makes sense too. To budget that amount. I mean, we don't just take the rate study and use that. We make sure it makes sense with what we're collecting.
Over with the history. Yeah.
So
Okay.
what the rate analysts will say, you're going to average 3% growth per year, but for us, it might be 5%, 4%, 2%, 1%, so that's what we look at, not the actual rate study, but compare it with what's actually going on.
But haven't we had positive growth each year in the permit section? So impact fees should be going up each time, right? We should be able to gauge over the last 3 years. It's not 3%. It's whatever that number is, and we have that data, right?
Yeah, we can look at the impact fee account and provide some feedback on what we see, but it could
Brandy?
be that it is going up. It's just not meeting what the projections were, or it could be that some of it's getting charged to another revenue account and that revenue account's over the projection.
But
So
why would we charge it to another account when it is clearly about impact fee account? Why would it go to somewhere else?
I don't know. We'll have to look at it, but it could be the impact fees are collected with water chart. They're being remitted along with another payment. And so the cashiers might just charge it all to one account. It could be. We'll have to look and see if that's the case or if we are just trending low, but behind the projections.
Jonathan, how do you feel about these numbers in this budget and so far where we are?
Well, I mean, we're still spending more than we're bringing in. So
Yes.
that's the and that's part of what I'm trying to communicate every time I'm coming back to this is just, hey, we've got an opportunity between now and the beginning of next fiscal year to take these reports that we're getting on a monthly basis and actually start to make the changes that we need to balance the budget without having to, raise taxes or make some catastrophic cuts. I think that's the piece where I'm focused on, because if you act early, you have more options available to you than if you act late. And what Jan said is true. 2 years ago, we get this reserve number that shows 1 to 2% left in reserves, and you don't have any other place to go. Like you can't have a negative budget. So that does not exist in the state of Florida. Nobody can pass an unbalanced budget. So once the cash is gone, you're done. Like that's it. You're over. Like you gotta go through and make cuts. You gotta go through and do X, Y, Z. And what I've watched over the last couple of years is we pulled out capital. So there used to be this buffering known as capital projects that existed before Hurricane Michael. Well, all of that capital project money has now been taken up with, CBDR allocation, SRF, all of these other funds. So in the general fund, there's not this margin that you just get to go play with. Oh, we're going to delay this road paving project a year. We're going to delay this a year. We're going to do this differently this year. Like you're down to the brass tacks. It's employees and it's services. That's all that you've really got left in these budgets. So the question is, what are you adjusting to make up for that $3 million gap that you've got this year? And then if you plan on doing the step increases or COLA raises, that increases that amount even more. So I think if that hopefully draws like the attention to, we can't just keep adding more programming into a budget that's not growing at the same pace as that programming. And we can't keep increasing employee pay at a different pace than what it's increasing, budgetary wise. And so what I think there was a couple things that I wanted to see just detailed reports on, like that 001 account that says charges for services. If I can just get a line item detail of that account number.
Okay.
I know that one was tracking behind. And then I do need a better explanation on the sale of fixed assets. So I see that as been, I guess it's got booked into last year, but it's still in this budget year. So what needs to happen to resolve that?
Well, so it will be a use of reserves. If we end up spending all of everything else, then it would be a use of budgetary reserves, because we budgeted for fiscal year 26, but we actually collected it in September, right before the end of the fiscal year. So the cash actually got recorded in fiscal year 25.
So does that mean that we're going to have to come back with a budget amendment to use additional reserves than what's currently in that budget? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
I think it's a little too soon to.
Yeah,
have
I mean,
to
right
determine
now
that.
we're at 9.3 to the positive for the general fund.
But we
Yeah,
used that in the
because all
budget
the
before we
taxes.
ever closed on it. So you're saying that we collected in 25, but it's supposed to be for 26?
We budgeted to spend it in 26. And we thought we were going to collect it in 26, which is why we budgeted to collect it, or else we would have just budgeted it as a use of reserves.
So let me ask this question this way. If we said to you guys, hey, you can't go spend that money, you're $9 million to the positive, what does that change? Since it's in previous year's budget.
Can you kind of roll in a little bit? Sorry.
Show your
So-
face.
For the
money
public,
was-
this is Samantha Perman, our budget manager.
So the money was budgeted in fiscal year 26 as a sale of an asset. It was not budgeted at all in fiscal year 25. So in fiscal year 25, technically it goes back into reserves. So it's not changing anything about the budget this year except where it's budgeted. If needed, we can fix it at the end of the year on the amendment to move it from sale of asset to use of reserves.
But
Jonathan has assured me he's gonna sell $3.2 million worth of assets this year.
So does that mean that that reserve number that Jan is giving us in our reports, is it accurate? Or is it reflective of the $2.8 million sale?
The
And
fund I'm sorry, the fund balance number?
The fund balance. Yep.
Yeah.
The fund balance number would be reflective of the
The
2
sale.
point,
Yeah.
the sale and the use of that money.
Okay. So the sale and the use. So is it 5% or is it 2% or is it 3% that the actual budget reserves are if you spend everything what you've said you're going to spend?
It's this 3 million that she has projected out for 9/30/26. It would be the
Jonathan, share
3,079,695.
that screen,
Yep.
please.
Let me share that.
Okay.
Okay. Oop, almost click leave. Which one was that?
That GF fund balance. Yes, so that unassigned fund balance at 9/30/2026, that 3 million number, that
We don't see
includes,
it.
It's not
Okay.
shared yet.
oh, sorry,
That's weird. Oh, share.
gotta press share. Okay,
Yep. There we go.
you got it now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this $3 million number right here, that is inclusive of collecting the 2.8 million and spending the 2.8 million. That's where we would be.
Yes. I concur.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
So is that number reflective of then the 4% number that's below that?
Yes,
And that will be what we project to look at. So we project to be at 4.53% per city policy at the end of this fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I needed to understand because I see this big giant book and I saw that, hey, we sold that property. We're counting on this budget year. I want to make sure that our reports are actually showing what they should show. So then my next question is, and these are just a couple for you to send out later. There was I guess the administration in St. Andrews CRA is way, way, way above. So if I could just get a line item detail on that one.
Okay.
And then
I'm sorry, did you say the personnel?
No, he said the admin. for the city.
there was
Right.
like one category of the St. Andrews. Jan went through it pretty quickly, so I wasn't able to write down the fund number.
It says 0.
I don't know what this.
No, there was something that was like 70-something% was already spent, and we haven't done hardly anything yet.
I don't see.
Nothing in St. Andrews CRA is 70%, sir. Let me share it.
Yeah, share it. I'll tell
Yep.
you.
Hang on.
And it's page 3.
Mhm.
Right here.
Operating costs. That was the one. It's quad.
32%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's probably some costs that haven't been allocated to the other CRAs.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Go ahead,
Just
Samantha.
pass that on.
Sure.
Oh, Samantha's going to address it. Go ahead, ma'am.
Say on that one, a lot of times when it comes to these capital projects, there are times where equipment in the capital project does not meet the equipment threshold to be expensed in capital outlays. So they might have done projects there where the expenses were classified as operating instead of in capital outlay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we'll get you the detail.
Question,
right.
does that apply for the operating costs or for the capital outlay line?
Well, sometimes
It would decrease the capital and increase the
Increase.
operating.
Mhm.
A good example would be like recently with the MLK Center where we've been buying gym equipment, even though it's capital outlay for the whole gym, our individual sets of dumbbells might be only $500. I'm making up numbers. I don't know how much dumbbells cost, but with it not being that $3,500 where we start to say that's a capital cost, those dumbbells would be charged to operating. So it might still be capital, but it
Okay.
gets allocated on operating.
And we'll do a budget transfer for that. That's
All right.
So is there a minimum that requires it to be a capital outlay, even though it is a capital outlay? Or
3,500.
In 2 years of service.
And that's
is that
that's
an
enshrined-
industry standard or something we set? Because
That's
to me,
something
that's
that's
misleading.
That's
Yeah.
our policy.
yeah, it's in the purchasing policy manual, sir, that the commission adopted.
And it's not very often that that happens, especially with like larger projects, like you might be thinking with MLK or Martin Theater. It's usually with smaller things where small equipment might have to be purchased separately.
All right, then let's hop back to CBDG. So and I could be wrong in this, but our expected allocation from CBDG is about a little over 300,000, but I see $1 million budgeted.
That was the remaining that they have not used from prior years.
That's the remaining they haven't used from prior years, if you didn't hear that, sir.
Okay. So is my understanding that this category will not have any general fund allocations in it?
Not yet.
What do you mean by not yet, Jan?
So every year we kind of end up truing up the ASAP program with the community fund. We haven't looked at that yet this year. There may be an ask from the community fund to true up the costs for ASAP that would come into the CDBG fund.
What kind of shore up numbers that each year, Jan?
That would be for
Roughly.
fiscal year 25, right?
Yeah, but it'll hit 26. I mean,
Right.
25 is gone. We can't do anything
Right.
about it. It would have been the cost of 25, but it will show up in 26.
And how much is that typically, that number to shore it up at the end of the year? Is it 100,000, 200,000?
It's typically about 250,000.
But that comes out of the community,
No.
fund, not the general fund.
That's right. The community fund.
So so in this, what we're looking at here, is there anything in this picture right now that would have any impact to general fund revenues?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And how much, so you're saying this $1 million is leftover money from previous years?
What million?
That's the CDBG program dollars, that
Yeah.
1 million.
Up here.
That should be their allocation. Is that not their
I think
allocation?
that's some left over from previous years as well.
Oh,
and
that they haven't gotten yet.
like that
Oh,
we're
okay.
that they
Yeah.
can draw down for like the
Yeah, their years are fun.
what they want to spend on the paving stuff.
Mhm.
That's where that would come.
Yeah, their years are funny, the way they can draw their allocations down. So
Yeah, because
that
I
makes sense.
think last time I pulled, it's only about $300,000 that we're getting from CBDG. So that's why I saw this $1 million number and I was like, okay, what's that?
So the capital outlay of 896. What is that? What was that budgeted? What was considered in that budgeting?
Remember?
I think it was for the paving, all the paving contributions, the equipment that they're buying for that paving.
We didn't vote on that until, when did we vote on that?
Yeah.
That was 623,000. That shows up in January. I don't know if that was budgeted that way.
It was
It
budgeted
budgeted that
as
way?
paving and we made a transfer from another account.
Yeah,
within-
600.
Yeah, so it was budgeted as paving, not necessarily that we were going to buy this paving equipment. They could have paved some roads with it. But they ultimately decided to propose to buy this equipment for the internal paving program.
Did you have another question, Commissioner Street? Because we wanted to go to something as well.
I guess really my last question is for management is like, hey, you guys are seeing we're still at a $3 million shortfall. What does that look like for you guys going into this next budget year? What is your plan and temperature for where we're going to tackle this?
He's talking about like the 2.8
Yeah.
one time.
And how do you feel about our spending so far against the budget that we created? Are we, what do you think, Jonathan?
Yep.
You like it? We good? Are you
What?
concerned?
No, I wouldn't use the word descript. What, Brady?
I just wanted to point out that.
Yeah, what page is that?
It's page 1,
Which one? Of
the
this.
first one.
Got it.
That we were $3 million, like the 2.8 was a one-time revenue this year, but that was also, we have refinanced the loan and our loan payment coming out of the general fund will be lower, I think by like 800,000. So it's more like 2.2
Mhm.
million. And
Yeah, so I would just say, I mean, yes, I would think we want to look at another document right here as far as the spending, but we've got a lot going on. We're doing a lot. We are, we're tracking it. I feel like we are watching where we can, but there's a lot of expectation on us in regards to everything that we're getting done. As far as fiscal year 2026. This is one of the reasons why we've scheduled an earlier budget workshop. It's in the end of March. And I think, what I'd like us to do and what the team wants us to do is approach this, collaboratively and see what areas, that we as a city are open to seeing a potential reduction in service. And so I think we need to have that conversation, again, collaboratively and continue to monitor these numbers closely. So, I know there's still a lot of unknowns out there. And, I think as we work through this budget together and as we start crunching those hard numbers, we will work, towards providing that balanced budget in accordance with the direction given from the commission. So
a couple of things, Jan. I think this is the page that I think said franchise or charges for services, where it's a group of things that create the revenue.
Yeah.
That's the one. If you can provide us with what those things are.
So they're all a group of accounts. Do you want to see all of the accounts grouped in these line items?
the big one there though is going to be building services. I mean, that's
Well, I mean, our permits are up, but our impact fees are down. Our charge for services are 1.9, but I don't know what that is. So yes, I'd like to know what that is. And then I'm going to ask, and this is really more of a commission question, going forward, how do y'all feel about if we just had, we each get a wish list of 5 things and end up with 2, and we each have 2 things we try to accomplish next year? Because to your point, Josh, it helps us understand what we got to accomplish on cost now and what we have to save to accomplish those goals for each of us.
So that's kind of what
You
I
like
wanted.
that idea?
That's what I did last year was ask for public input first on what services do they do, out of all the pie, what services do they want the most, and then take that input, and then we have to decide where do we shovel the money to, because I mean, I think what Josh was getting at earlier is that we started with the $4.23 million, and now we're down to around 3, just in reserves. And so while at the end of the year, we're going to have reserves, if we continue to go down this path, we're not we have to make some tough decisions moving into fiscal year 27.
I think for me also what I'm looking at too is like we've made a couple of decisions that have ongoing costs that haven't been booked yet into this budget year. And so if we continue to expand programming at MLK, if we continue to expand, we've got Martin Theater that should finish towards the end of next year. Does that bring new expenses online with that? We've got, the paving program that we just talked about in past. It's got an ongoing every year allocation to personnel that's not reflected yet into this budget. So there's a couple of things where I'm like, okay, and then you've got a step increase that's with our team. And so there is a cost that comes with those step increases that's kind of already in there. But I would like to see at our next one of these, like what are the things that we know are coming up next year that are not reflected in this year's budget, so that we understand what Brian said is true. There's a $3 million number, but if I just took those 3 elements that I just said, that could be another $1 million, another $1.5 million that's on top of that 3 million. Could be 2 million. I don't know, because I don't know what I don't know.
Or an emergency.
Yeah, well, no, these would be just general operating expenses.
Yeah. I'm saying I'm tacking on. I'm piling on.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. General
Yeah.
emergency. Okay. So I think, one of the things with us passing this element that when we're approving these budgetary items, we also improve the ongoing expense that comes with it. It kind of helps us keep in advance of where the snowball effect, which is very common in government, that it happens, where we can stay ahead, that we're looking at, this is what revenue growth is coming, this is what expenses are doing, and we don't get out of line with that. Because right now we're out of line with that. And when you're using reserves, you're out of line. And so we've got to find a way to balance that. And I'm not asking for next year that, hey, we've got a surplus. What I'm asking is we at least need to not use reserves and not use non-reoccurring revenue. Like
Windfalls.
those two things, if we can balance the budget on that, then I will feel good going into 26 that, hey, we've resolved something, and then we build from there so we can return our reserves to the number that we need.
So that's exactly how I was thinking in terms of asking for a 5-year recovery strategy. And that number one strategy is no use of reserves for recurring. I mean, if we just say, okay, we're going to stop where we are right now, kind of freeze what we've got going, and put in place some guiding principles for how we're going to operate, not just how we're going to budget, but how we're going to operate going forward. You asked a question earlier about the housing and its effect on the general fund. And I think that's where we have to be looking to see what affects the general fund, and that becomes a part of our decision making about what we do. And but some guiding principles. And Commissioner Hughes, you spoke to this earlier about spending now. You know, how do we address spending now and not wait until we're in the budget process and we're projecting for next year? I think it's doable, and I think it's we can prioritize the things that we want to see happen. Not just in our wards, but citywide. And I'd like for us to consider that we direct staff to make sure there's a cost of living, a COLA for everybody this year, because the exponential problems that can occur when we begin, poor morale, which we have been working over the past few years to turn around. And invite them to be a part of helping to say, hey, where can we cut costs? I think the folks who are out there working every day could be a part of helping us to look at how we stop spending, especially if we know we've got a goal specific. What are we solving for? Is it 5 million, 3 million, 7 million, and where we could take that from?
Great idea, Janice. So question to this point, Jonathan, how much have we spent this year that was non-budgeted that we had to have that would fall into that category of we're not going to do that? Is it $5 million that we can add back in to we're not going to spend? Did we overspend in areas that we shouldn't have on projects where if we have the idea of Janice gets 2, everybody gets 2, we're working on those and we don't go outside that? That's actually a savings. We just don't know what it is until we know what we've overspent on this year. Do you have an idea on that, Jonathan?
I don't. We would have to look into that, sir.
And
But for
we
folks,
haven't actually overspent yet this year.
Okay, how about non-budgeted spending? That's a better way to put it.
So like if you look like at that first page of the financial report, like the general fund, and of course this is a snapshot in time of
This one.
Yes. Can y'all see that? For the general fund, and we've collected almost all of our ad valorem, but today or December 31st, we were 9.3 to the positive million in the general fund. So when you ask how much have we overspent, we haven't yet. But of course this is only, a quarter into the fiscal year.
But if we reframe the question to have we spent anything that wasn't budgeted?
Yeah.
Then I think that's a different
The-
question that we can answer
the-
because as the year progresses, we could
charrettes.
see the squeeze.
Thank you, Teach. I appreciate that. That helped. Yes, ma'am, you're right.
I don't think
Any-
they could legally spend something that we haven't budgeted. So
Yeah. I want to,
Well,
but
We've done budget
We've done-
amendments,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
those are included in the amended budget column. Those would be anything that was approved prior to December 31st should be reflected in that amended budget column.
yes.
So, like Jonathan just mentioned, like the Dover Coal charrettes, that was something that came up, and we wanted to hire Dover Coal to do the charrettes on the marina uplands.
Yes.
So we did a budget amendment actually that wasn't a budget amendment because the money was already budgeted in downtown CRA.
CRA, yeah.
Right. And it was already budgeted for the Breezeway project. Remember, we just shifted that. Instead of the Breezeway, we spent it on Dover Coal. So it might have had to move account lines because it went from, a project to consulting, professional services line.
but just for the benefit of the public, just want to reiterate something that I think Commissioner Street started to say, and I don't know if he broke up or he was
No.
cut off, but we can't just spend over budget. So
no,
Yeah.
you can't.
You can't spend anything that's not budgeted.
I can't
Now,
spend anything that's not
I
budgeted.
will say
Brian.
that
I'm not
has
signing that
happened.
check.
That's right.
Brian, you had asked, you were talking about changing the type of budgeting that we do, instead of that silo. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah.
And are we doing that in this coming year?
So previously, I think it was 2 years ago, I requested and the commission voted for and agreed that we move to a service delivery budget. And a service delivery budget, the numbers are all kind of the same, if that makes sense. Like all the totals are going to be the same, but what we would see is this is how much police costs in its entirety. This is how much fire costs in its entirety. This is how much public works costs in its entirety. And so it kind of takes your budget and instead of having, these categories where you don't necessarily know, like personnel costs. This is a perfect example on the screen right now. Personnel costs, we're amended budget at $41 million personnel costs. That's for every single person in the city. That's for and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but if I remember correctly, it's for all of your salaried personnel. It's all for wage grade personnel, your hourly folks, and then potentially if there's any kind of contracting that may be needed specifically, that might go in there, but probably not. But the point is that you would be able to see personnel costs across the board with this is how much it costs for fire and personnel costs. This is how much it costs in public works. This is how much it costs in admin. And so when you have your directors and you have your directorates, your directors, then they know their budget because they have to run their budget underneath Jonathan, right? And all it does is it shows the budget in that manner. And in my opinion, it is way easier for the public to understand. It's way easier for us to understand. And it's way easier for the directors to understand because all of this stuff gets lumped together and the screen just went away. But all that stuff gets lumped together and while staff's not trying to hide anything, it gets hard to find where things are at, if that makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with this type of budget. It's just not my preferred type of budget. And we're supposed
Other
to
than
have,
you can't understand it.
yeah. You pretty much you have to have a degree in finance to understand it right off the bat. You kind of have to learn how to understand it. And that makes it really hard when you're talking with citizens and you're like, well, hey, this is how much money we're spending on this, and it's not, readily available. It'd be way easier if we can look at those silos, and they're not so much silos as they are just grouped silos.
If I can jump in here,
Samantha,
so
can we change this year?
Well, we're
so
supposed to have one that's supposed to be side by side. This 2027. That's not a.
So if I can jump in, so it's already done that way. The reason you have that summary that we were looking at a second ago is just how we present it from the summary level. So we've gone to the budget here, and we're going to show that it's already broken down like that, Commissioner. So which one do you want me to use?
Just grab, like you can click. So this is the budget
Police.
report for fiscal year 26, and he just clicked on police. So here is how we currently budget using the state chart of accounting system. And it's by line item budgeting for professional services, other contractual, everything is broken down here by account. Now, I think Commissioner Granger would like us to focus more on like a program service type of budget, which instead of seeing these lines here, you would see maybe community policing and a cost for that. So by program rather than right now, the costs for community policing are all spread out throughout these accounts. There's some in salaries. There's some in all of these personal accounts. There may be some in, operating brain supplies or so that's the shift that we're working with our departments right now. We are working towards that. And so it would be broken down by program rather than by the account line like this you see today.
So if the CRA is a good example because there was 4 of them and you had 4 different personnel costs and the numbers were all different. So I'm assuming those are salaries.
That's on that whole section. Scroll back up there.
Oh.
Down.
I'll go back.
You want me to go back to
Yeah.
police?
So all those salary and wage line items, that all those accounts for every single cost center that you saw on the first page, that's everything in that one line, personnel costs. But I can break it out more if that's what you would like to see on your monthly report.
I want to know what it costs to pay the police, what it costs to overall, individually, what does it cost to pay each department? What are the salaries?
Okay, so right here, this is for the police department, salaries and wages, $9.1 million. With all benefits, health insurance, pension, and overtime and all, it's 15.2. That's the projected for fiscal year 2026.
So how much of that detail do you want to see every month? Because the more detail you want, the longer this report's going to be, and it becomes overwhelming, and you're
I don't know about it on a
not sure that
monthly.
you're
I'm
going to
talking about,
benefit.
I want to know the annual. We're going to talk about annual stuff when we're budgeting, and here we're talking about monthly. So
These are
it's
monthly
an
reports
apple
that
and
I'm
orange.
required to prepare.
Yeah,
So to keep
Oh,
you.
no, man, no, I know that. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, I'd like to see an overall annual cost, and we'll use salaries because that's just an even for each department. And
How often do you want to see that?
and that's one time a year. That's annual. But you're showing us monthly. That's fine.
Well,
I
that's
just
the
don't know what
financial
it costs to run each department, and that's
If I may.
because we spread out stuff.
Okay.
Because each department gets a piece of this and a piece of that. Well, if somebody works in a department, that's where their salary is,
So
right?
Commissioner
Right.
Hughes, what they're showing us now is available to us. And maybe the way to address this instead of producing a lot of reports is to show us how to access. I just
Okay,
copied
fair.
the,
And we're happy to do that anytime. I clicked on the personnel schedules because these are all in the budget report as well. But so for the police, when we were looking at that $15 million personnel number,
There you go.
these are the detail of the positions that are funded with that number. So that number funds 155 positions.
Let me show them something. And I want to take a second and just show how simple this is. If you simply go to our website, this is actually one of our main tags right here, budget and millage rate. And you click on it, this pops right up, and every one of these is hyperlinked. So if you click on City Commission, it'll jump right to it. If you click on Parks, Culture, and Recreation, it goes right to that department. So that's just so you know, as far as like navigating our budget. And if you guys would like a printed copy, we're also happy to, print those off and provide a printed copy. But again, this gets updated every time we do a budget amendment. So that,
No.
no, sorry, this doesn't, I'm sorry. But Jan's monthly things are going to be updated to reflect budget changes. So that the one you get from her every month is going to be up to date and reflect the revised budget as amended with a budget amendment that y'all have to approve.
Right.
So this is the annual adopted budget that you guys approved in September. And then Jan's monthly financial report is reporting on the actuals, and she compares that with any amended budget amendments that we have done to date.
Right. And the annual report that is done on September 30th, 2025, that has your all of this on an annual basis. So what you were asking for annually, that's our annual financial report that the auditors issue at whenever they're finished. So I can provide you with, I don't have 25 yet. They haven't even been here yet, but I can give you 24 for you to look at. And if you want to see anything different in your monthly report, let me know, because I can break it down. But like I said, the more information that you're going to see on these sheets, the more overwhelming it is. But I will send you the detail of those revenue accounts, because the revenue accounts, each one might have between 5 and 20 accounts listed under each of those line items. But like I said, under personnel costs, there might be 200 accounts under there, because it's those 20 for every cost center.
So Jan's report is summarizing, like it'll say taxes, and it's a summary of all of these,
Well, ad valorem and delinquent are together, and then the gas, utilities,
those were your other charges.
communication services, other taxes, franchise fees are together.
And I think y'all asked about charges for services.
Right. That's that line item.
So can we look at
Right.
we look at
Go ahead, Commissioner Granger.
sorry, I think Josh had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're looking at we're just looking at the screen. Whoever, go ahead, Commissioner Street, if your hand was up.
So I think so one of the things that I noticed, I think, Brian, you brought this up on service delivery, use Pensacola as an example. It's very easy to see this is how much it takes to, keep our city safe through police services. This is the response times are and what it takes to keep that going with fire. And this is how much it takes to complete that service. This is how much it takes to maintain. The challenge that I've always found with the budget, and this is now going on 5 years, is we go in and we talk about exactly what Jan just said, is once we start diving into the granular level, everything starts to get super convoluted. It gets really confusing. And then, even for me, from a commission standpoint, as well as general population, we just go back, oh, that's too complicated. I don't understand it. You guys must be corrupt just because it's so complicated. So this is the natural cycle that exists inside of government budgeting. Part of what I would like to see, and I've tried to be more specific as we've walked into each one of these budget processes each year, is I'm focused on service delivery, but I'm really focused on what's your book of work, department, whoever you are, what are you doing for our citizens this year? Because I want to know and understand that. I see a community policing item. That sounds really good to me. Sounds really good. But I don't know whether community policing is going and buying a trailer that has a stage associated with it, or whether it's going out and playing basketball with kids on a street. Like, I don't know that. Like, it's hard for me to relate to that. I don't know whether it's really truly important or whether it's not important, because I don't know what the program of work is for it. Our quality of life team, Parks, Recs, and Culture, Recreation. They've gone from being $1 million department to being a $4 million department since Hurricane Michael. Now, are parks maintained better in certain aspects? Yes. But what is the body of work that's being done in that department? And what assurity do I have from when I sign my name on the line that says, city, go forth and execute this budget with my approval as a commission, go forth and do this? What assurances do I actually have that what program of work was submitted to me actually got followed through by the end? Because you can see within a month of passing a budget, we're moving stuff around already. And so that tells me that we're kind of still in the spot where we're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants, and not totally. And it's better than where it was. First budget that I got, first budget amendment, I know you guys remember this, it was $300 and something million worth of budget amendments. I mean, that was crazy. And so thankfully that's down, but what I really want to see is, yes, service delivery, but I also want to understand what's the body of work that's in that service delivery. I want to be able to understand that. I know a lot of your departments have that. Like if I ask Chief, how many calls did you do this week? What time were those calls? Like, well, we can get that data. I just don't know how to present it in a way that ultimately the public can understand, because I can tell you if I'm watching this video and I'm a citizen today, I'm like, that's just a bunch of numbers on a page. I don't understand it. And I think if this is what we're saying is what a service delivery budget looks like, I think that's going to be the same reaction that they have. So I don't know how to fix that yet, but I think as we go through this process, it would be good to be able to say, this is what we're executing with this dollar. We do it in the CRA to some extent, but I don't know that we have that with any other department.
So starting next Tuesday, and I believe I mentioned this at one of the last meetings, the first meeting of every month, under the last item under city manager, we're going to have a monthly report, and it's going to show everything that we did by department from an operational standpoint, all those calls and everything. You will remember, though, we used to, well, some of you remember, I don't know that Mayor Branch and Commissioner Hughes do, because it was a couple of years, it was, I don't even know if we did it my first year as a city manager, maybe we did. But when we did the original budget workshop in July, in advance of setting everything in September, we would bring all the directors up and kind of go through, basically the prior year, all of those numbers, all of those metrics, everything that they did, the number of calls, peaks, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of turned that into a half a day event. And the feedback we got from some of the prior elected officials and the public was that was all a bit much. So we're going to start presenting that monthly. And yes, we do acknowledge that things do change as we get into the fiscal year. I mean, keep in mind, we start planning for this. I mean, we're already kind of starting some of the planning process preliminarily for 2027 right now. And so that formally will kick off as we do this pre-budget workshop the end of March. So when all that happens, by the time we get to the beginning of the following calendar year, or the following calendar year, some priorities are going to change, and so some of those shifts are going to happen.
But Jonathan, if we budgeted and we each had a couple of projects, and each department said, this is what we're trying to accomplish each year. And by the way, Josh, great idea. Let's say a change is coming and we say, okay, y'all figure it out inside your department. Not everybody, they know what they're going to try to do. We know what we're trying to do out of that department. And they get to come to you and say, all right, we figured out this month, we're not going to go spend over here. We're going to save, and we can go put it over here for next month. And we're saving money to do that inside that department. But we all know what they're trying to accomplish annually. Is that kind of where you're going with that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a work program from an aspect of what do we execute? Like, we set out a budget, let's say it's $1 million. This is what we're planning to do with this $1 million. There needs to be something that's kind of automatic and understood. And this really isn't a knock on staff, Jonathan. This is how it works with pretty much any government agency from what I've seen. I just wish, rather than you guys having to come and make a report to us, we could see what these movements are happening ongoing. Like today, diving in, Jan, what you did today and going through each one of the department lines, let me see, this is what's under, this is what's over. Yes, I have to understand, well, this is why this is delayed. This is why this came in early. This is why this is above. This is why this is under. I get that. I just wish that it was easier to actually go through and keep track of as we're going through. I don't know if it's a monthly report on departments. This is where their expenditures are in this line item, and then allow us to ask questions if there's something out of line. I don't know if it's a deep dive every so often. But what I guess I'm saying is that right now, as it stands, we can approve a budget. things can change within certain parameters. And then if something major has to change, it has to come back to us. But there's a lot of flexibility that exists outside of what we do. And I don't know that that necessarily results in the greatest amount of trust in the process. And that is not saying I don't trust staff. It's just saying when I approve a budget, my expectation is we move from here to here. And if that doesn't happen, then I have to ask the question, like right now, I'm asking the question, we're a quarter year in. We know that we've got a shortfall of $3 million. So, okay. So a quarter of that would be, let's say it's 750,000. What have we done to create $750,000 of savings? Now I know we're on target, so on and so forth. That's just an example that I'm going, may not be the best example, but I feel like there needs to be more transparency in the process. I don't necessarily think I want to be in a meeting for 12 hours hearing somebody talk about the call volume or any of those things, but anything that kind of is a goalpost point for us to point to and say, oh, hey, this is tracking up, this is tracking down. It would be good to know that.
So you're looking for KMIs and KPIs.
A KPI with a measurable that's coming out as we go through the year.
So a KPI with a
Kilowatts
goal.
by inch, KBI.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think the water meter stuff is a great example. We talked about that in March. We made a decision. We thought it was going to take us 3 months. We're sitting here, it'll be a year before we've actually gotten. And why was that? Well, I can explain it now that I know, like some of these went offline as we were fixing other ones. They found other issues. They found some software issues, yada, yada, yada. But I communicated to my constituents, we're going to have this fixed within, 90 days. And here we are almost a year down the road. That's not good for building trust. And we've got to find a better way of reporting that.
So, Jonathan, can you click the link that I sent you and pull it up on the screen? This is really so if we have this, great. But when we click the link on the website, we don't get this. We get the full budget.
I don't know. Oh, you emailed it to me?
Teams.
Oh, and Teams. Okay.
And okay, well, we're in Zoom.
Yeah, well, you can click the Teams.
Okay.
Do you want me to send it again so it'll pop up on your screen?
Nope, we got it.
I got it. Let's see here.
If this is Pensacola.
Yeah, we can't share through Zoom.
It's gonna
won't-
take a while to load. It's coming though.
For some reason the chat feature is turned off. But yeah, if you click that link and then now go over to, there you go, and just kind of scroll through that slowly. This is their budget in brief. This would be very handy, especially to when discussing budget with citizens. I mean, it's very transparent. This is where your money's going, broken out. And if you continue to go, it kind of tells you, hey, this is the cycle. This is how this works. So a lot of people don't understand. They want us to do stuff in the middle of the year, and it's, if we haven't budgeted for it, then it's probably not going to happen. So we have to budget a year, in advance.
This is in ours.
I really like this, Brian.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this would satisfy me if we had something like this.
It's high level though.
Yeah. This is all very high level, and we do this to some degree. But if it's a formatting change, we're happy to do that.
But do you see where it's public safety?
This is nothing like ours, Jonathan.
No, this is not an adopted budget. This is not an adopted
This
budget.
is their budget.
No,
in
it's just a
brief,
brief.
which is what
Right.
utilizes the
But-
graph.
What it is
so
it's,
you see-
it's
you see-
easily read by the public and,
Yes.
and the third grade.
we can definitely do something like this. Samantha can do it, I think, in a day probably. But like
Oh.
how this
Give
is
it to you.
broken down by public safety, general government, culture, and rec. I'm gonna go over to our. How do I get to our budget?
It's under that one right there. Yeah.
Is
Right
it in this year?
Yeah, in the fund summary.
Yeah, there is a pie chart that you can click on somewhere in here.
Which one of those is easier to understand just as a right off the bat?
This year.
Oh,
I
okay.
did it maybe.
Okay.
last
So
year.
really what we're talking about is readability.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Well-
and we're
Yeah.
happy to work on something like that. Right, get it?
What are you trying to
Where
click?
is it?
Edge.
I'm
It's on
trying-
Edge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we can definitely do something like this.
So for me, Brian, this helps with the general public. But it doesn't necessarily improve anything from operation, I guess is what the only thing that what I'm looking for is something that goes beyond this. This is great. I agree with you. This shows very easy for me to illustrate, but how do I answer the question, how is PD getting better? How is trash service getting better? How is Parks and Rec getting better? How is operationally City Hall getting better? This just explains where the money's going, but it doesn't do anything to help the commission provide clearer direction to the team on what our goals and objectives are.
So we have to provide clear direction to them what KPIs we want to see,
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
Let us tell them what we want to accomplish.
exactly.
Yeah.
This is great to show this is where the money's going today. And it's going this much in public safety. It's going this much in this. It's going this and that. This is absolutely a clearer way of representing to our citizens of where the money goes. Now, beyond that, what I believe the expectation is from us, a commission direction, is trying to create better outcomes inside of those priorities. And so particularly ones that are driven by, hey, our constituents, they want to see things happen in certain aspects. And so what I'm looking for is how do we get more granular without getting complicated, if that makes sense. And I think what you're saying is the right way is we have to keep KPIs, clear objectives, clear goals to say to the team, like right now, like I have said this probably 20 times, find $3 million worth of savings before we get to the budget year. And you'll see every time we talk about it, we've yet to create any forward progress to finding that $3 million before we get to that. I don't know if that needs to be a commission vote. I don't know if it needs to be a KPI report. I don't know if it needs to be an email. But what I'm trying to say is that's not happening. And part of it is not the fault of staff. It's like there's not clarity around, is this truly an objective or is it not? And so, you know, and it may not be an objective that's shared by everybody. And if that's the case, then that's great. I'll stop talking about it and I'll move on and we'll just deal with it when we deal with it.
So maybe one of the things we need to do is kind of tackle each directorate and say this is like obviously I keep using PD as an example because they're easier to use as an example because pretty much everybody kind of understands PD. But you've got crime rate, crime clearance rate, and arrest rate. You've got response time, calls for service, enforcement productivity. There's other ones we can add to that. Where we're just asking for a report on where you at with these, and then, obviously we don't want to set a goal for arrest rate, right? But for something like crime rate, we can say, hey, we want to see the crime rate, go down. Obviously, we want to see that, and so I think everybody wants to see the crime rate go down. Not that it's very high, but whatever it is, it needs to go down, right? But I think that would be beneficial for them as well as us because like calls for service is one that they do track. And, that they can tell you how many calls of service they got on X amount of night or whatever. So it just depends on whether you're looking for quantitative or qualitative type data as to what KPIs we dive into. All I'm suggesting is that we choose a directorate as a commission. This month, we're going to decide, first meeting, maybe we talk about what KPIs we're going to do. and then that gives time for staff to go back and give us feedback at the next meeting, and then they can, and we say, okay, here's what we want to see moving forward. Because a lot of the times I think we don't exactly know how to communicate exactly what we want to see to staff so that they can give us what we want to see. And I think if we can tackle just one of these every month, I think we'll get there.
All right, so
Advocate for both qualitative and quantitative, because one set of metrics won't necessarily address all citizens' concerns. So the qualitative would be like, as you were talking about the police and giving those metric ideas. I think for many in the community, the question is, do we trust the Panama City Police? For others in the community is, do we feel safe in our community? And so those qualitative measurements, I think, ought to be a part of how we're moving the needle. Community policing is a good example. You know, I think you asked about that a moment ago, Josh. What does that really mean, and how do we measure how well we are doing in that regard?
I like that comment about it's quantitative and it's qualitative, because really I want people to feel more confident in Panama City government. I think we all want to see that. I think that we want them to feel confident in their elected representatives. And I think part of that is important. I mean, I could be measuring a measurable that nobody even cares about, you know? I mean, but the question is, there's also this feeling aspect that comes to things. I'm going to ask, like, I've sent something. This is a bit on the more extreme side of things that we can do, but there is a format that I've been working on for a while that Jonathan, Nevin, and them have already gotten. I'm just going to ask that they circulate it to you guys on ways actually creating a mechanism that we can filter these KPIs to, that's independent of this internal process and allows us to provide, you know, does part of this work for us. And
Does it cost money, Josh?
Not initially, it doesn't. So, but if it works, it will save us a lot of money. So, unfunded mandates. Yeah. We get it all the time. so anyway,
Exactly.
they've got those. They've already seen it. I just like it to be circulated to you guys and all of us so that we can kind of that. And I don't mind posting online for people else to look at it too. But it's basically trying to create a mechanism that drives us to government excellence is what it's really meant towards. And I think that is quantitative and qualitative in the way we measure that. But if you can do that in a day, Samantha, like Brandy already committed you to getting us to that layout that Brian showed us, I think that's great. We'll get that pushed out by tomorrow at 6, apparently.
Is she still there?
We'll give her a couple of days.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
We got to make sure it's ADA compliant.
Yeah, it's got to be ADA compliant. Go ahead, Commissioner Hughes. You're muted, sir. Sir, you're muted.
Yeah. You're muted.
Sir, you're muted.
How about that?
There you go.
said, I have not been through each department coming and, you know, talk their wish list. I'd like to do that at least once, because, and it doesn't have to be all day. Here's my, you know, here's what we do. Here's what we want. Just to understand how they're thinking a little bit. And our wish list, if we all had that together when we're voting or deciding on what to do or chop out, at least it's been a round circle from everybody, not just us saying we want these things and y'all adapt. Because that's what we do, is we have to adapt to what they want. That's getting it. But that way we're all talking. And I know it's a long time, maybe, but is that something that we can do? Or if you've been through it, what are the pros and cons with it?
Yeah, it wasn't all day. It wasn't all day. I think Josh said that.
Oh, I've definitely been through that one, Robbie. And
yeah, it was only about 4 hours. Yeah, it's only about half a day. But what it gives you is the opportunity for, you know, that, and it's not really their wish list. They kind of talk about what they've done over the last year, and then also what they hope, you know, things they would like to accomplish based on the feedback that they've gotten in the next year. And then it gives everyone a chance on the dais to ask questions of each of the department heads.
It would be good for like a one department to do it at, say, a commission meeting or something like this. And it was just all of them strung together. It's just so many numbers coming out of a fire hose that it's tough.
4 hours.
Yeah, and the ones towards the end, they don't get the best of our attention, because I mean after sitting for 4 hours, it's rough. So I would like to see it. I like the information, I like the data. I just wish it was more broken up.
So my feelings are the reverse.
Or what?
Is the reverse of what you just proposed, Robbie, is I would like the departments to hear from us on what our priorities and our objectives that we're hearing from our constituents are, so that they can help us problem solve to increase confidence in government and ultimately execute what we hear people are saying and asking. The challenge with what we did it before, it was great. It was informative. I'm not going to knock what it was. The team spent a ton of time preparing for it, and it was very well presented. However, it was based upon the objectives of what the internals of government has set as their objectives. And there are some things that you can never change. There's things that are government regulations. There's things that are mandated by the state, things that are mandated by the federal government. Those things are there regardless of whether we disagree with them or whether we don't. Like this ADA, it's going to take another 2 days to finish this visual of this government piece, because it's got to go through this ADA compliance, which is a certain department in that. And don't get me wrong, I'm for ADA compliance, but you can see how a simple document that should take somebody a couple hours to do is now turned into a 3-4 day adventure.
Right.
And
And I'm with you, Josh. I believe we ought to tell the staff what our goals are. I just don't know what each department really, what they're trying to accomplish without sitting down annually and having never been through it,
yeah,
Guys, I don't think it's either or. I mean, that was a long experience, but it was helpful coming on. There were things that happened that first summer when there were 3 of us new to the commission, Brian, myself, and Rohan. And so we had a series of those kinds of things that I think would be helpful to you. Yes, we as commissioners get bombarded with a lot, but I think in the context of the city staff gets a lot as well. And so putting the two together would be helpful moving forward, especially again, as we're talking about belt tightening. These folks are our partners, as I have the employees, as I have gone with visited departments, ride-alongs. They love our city. They want to please management and commission, but more importantly, they want to serve our city, and they are our partners with us in this.
I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. If I thought it was an issue where I didn't feel like we had people that wanted to do the job and wanted to do it well, it'd be a completely different conversation. I don't think it's that. I think it is a scenario where there's probably instances that we're unclear in what we're asking. And then there's other instances where we're unclear with what their objective is. And so I don't know how to do that in a format that is not like, because what Brian said is true. After about an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're not giving your best to those departments that are presenting. I mean, let's be honest. Like it gets to the point that you're sitting in through a webinar like you would at your office that is just like gone, 2 hours too long. And that's a disservice to them too. So whatever the format is that would work to do that, I do agree that it's a both and. But I think we've got to be clearer with our objectives too, so that the team ultimately can run around it. We have a saying, it's biblical. You write the vision down so the people may run with it, like the heralds may run with it. And without that, guess what? The people perish. So that's the reality that exists. And I think we've got to be clearer with what those objectives are, because and I'm looking for a format and on how to do that. So. And
I also think that we need to also kind of rein ourselves in. There are 5 of us. And when we come up with our ideas and our notions and we send our text and we send our email and we say, arrange this meeting, you know, we're layering on that staff as well. And so, not to say that we need to shirk our responsibilities as commissioners, but we also need to be mindful of what it is that we're causing when we, especially now we're talking about cost cutting, saving time, and what everything costs. I mean, my idea where I say, okay, Jonathan, or okay, Nevin, I need to know about this or that. It's not just them. They're going to tap into whatever departments that need to pull that information to get it for us. And, you know, we're all using AI and it's helping us a great deal. And we send our ideas in, you know. So I think as we're going forward, that we be mindful of that as well.
I think that's why I think a few clear commission-led objectives would help not just us, but it would help the team have some.
Yes.
We would
Yes.
appreciate
We
it.
would love
So
that. Yes.
if we all threw in 5 ideas and came up with 2 as my example, does that help? I mean, it directs all of us to know what you're trying to accomplish, or I am, but staff knows where they are, where to go for the rest of the year. I mean, here's what we're trying to accomplish.
So with what you guys get from a structure on this specific process that I've got the team sending to you, take that, look at it through the lens that just got shared. It is a mechanism for us to create a priority and objectives list. And I'm not talking about projects. I'm talking about where we want things to improve. That may be solved 15 different ways, but giving us the ability to do that without taxing the staff is like incredibly important, I think. And I don't want to discourage the team from taking, and specifically the commission, from taking action. I got into office because I wanted to see things change and improve. I think everybody that's at this table did as well. So I think we need to figure out a way to help us be more effective and ultimately the team be more effective. And one of the ways we do that is through clarity of process.
And I think there comes a time when city staff ought to be able to say, Commissioner, I appreciate what you're asking of us, but we cannot do this at this time because we've already got this. And so if what you are proposing will help us to get there,
Yep.
I think that is something worth looking at.
And look, and we all have the option that if we see something in that process that we don't like, you can come back and ask the rest of the commission to do it. I mean, like, that's the reality that exists. Like, if 3 of us agree, you can push through pretty much any kind of process change or things like that. But, you know, there needs to be some type of parameter that also creates a more unified effort into what we're doing. Because right now I feel like we're all trying to get things accomplished, but, you know, it's overwhelming for the team too. And sometimes those things are misinterpreted as what we're actually trying to accomplish. So.
All right. Well, we are 9 minutes over. And we look forward to continuing this conversation. Again, you'll start seeing some, I think one of the first things is from an operational standpoint, some of those monthly numbers, which I think will be very helpful. And we will work ASAP to kind of, I guess, collapse the budget into a more presentable format to help. And we've got our first kind of pre-budget workshop set for March 31st. So looking forward to get some really good feedback from each of y'all on that, on what y'all want us to continue to focus on. And we will have some metrics. I think we can kind of find a balance between having, 14 different presentations and rather a condensed version of, what we've done and some of those performance indicators that we've talked about. I think a lot of what we want to see as far as police response time, fire response time, the number of items that we're fixing as regards to water leaks and roads, and on top of all the multiple projects that we have. So look forward to having that conversation. That'll be here in room 10, March 31st in the afternoon. So hopefully we'll get some public participation as well. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank y'all.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good night.